And now I'd like to mention, I think everyone here knows that Maryland has some significant problems right now. We have oppressive regulations, restrictive gun laws, which as a native Texan, that really annoys me. High income taxes, high property taxes, and we even tax the rain, as we know. What we need now is someone that can stand up against that, and as Joel mentioned before about character, and have the conviction of faith and the Constitution behind them, and run for governor. And I would argue Charles Lollar is going to be that man for 3 reasons. Number 1, he knows how to run a business. Number 2, he knows how to serve. And number 3, he's been involved in our communities. He has been a business executive and with business experience for over 17 years, including most recently as general manager for Cintas Corporation, where he oversaw 170 employees and had a $23 million sales budget. He also knows how to serve. Not only is he a major in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserves, where he served almost 16 years, including an active duty assignment to Kosovo leading Marines. During his time in the Marines, he attended obviously OCS and earned multiple medals and decorations. Presently, he is still serving in the reserves as a major in the Marine Corps as an intelligence officer. So he does know how to serve. And third, he's been involved in our communities. He has served on numerous boards and PACs interacting with citizens and served on the Charles County Central Committee as well. Charles and Rosha have been married for 20 years and have over 20 years and have 4 lovely daughters, all teenagers. He'll tell you a few stories about those.
Go bad.
So I'd like to introduce to you now Charles Lollar, running for governor 2014, state of Maryland.
There was a 4th point that she missed. I'm a really good listener. I have 4 daughters and I've been married for 20 years. I'm a really good listener. And I know how to do it, I'm told, very, very well. Before I get into my few moments of comments, I do want to say that I certainly found another brother that I didn't know I had. If we have about 10 more, just 10 more, David Whitney's, we're going to be okay here in the state of Maryland.
Amen.
We just got to spread the wealth around. Some across the country. Eventually there'll be time for that. The good Lord will smile upon us. And the challenge, though, Pastor, is getting people to hear, not just listen, but hear and understand and then apply. I just spent the last 8 weeks teaching a seminar entitled The Revival of the American Citizen, where I compared and contrast the American citizen of 1787 to the American citizen of today. And as you were going through your comments and remarks, my wife leans over and says, he sounds exactly like you. And I said to her, well, you know what, I think we might have found just another brother. And it's just amazing how that works. You will understand when I say this. He works in mysterious ways. He brings people together. And sometimes you feel like you're alone, don't you?
That's right.
But every once in a while he's got to remind you, Elijah, he's got 300 other ones that hadn't bowed and need a Baal. There's many, many that are going down that same course, especially here in our state of Maryland and across the country, that honestly are looking at government and saying, wait a minute, it's supposed to be for the people and by the people. Something is horribly wrong with the direction that we're going. The tragedy, though, is people miscarry that because of a very well-known election that we just had for president over 6 years ago. And they miscarry it. They think that this new immersion or this new excitement about reestablishing our country and our rights and understanding what a Jeffersonian democracy really is, they're miscarrying that and interpreting that as a racial move against the president based upon skin color. And we have to fight so hard against that. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people that said this is not about the color of a president that's in office currently. I applaud the fact that this nation can elect a president that's different than than those that were before. I can appreciate that. I get excited about that. The same way I'll be excited when this nation welcomes their first female president of the United States. But I don't care what your skin color is. I don't care what your gender is. When you start messing with my Constitution, it's a problem. If we don't honor the Constitution, what other choice do we have? What becomes the plumb line? And I'm confident in this one thing. If you wait this storm out long enough, specifically when it comes to policies that that stand directly against our Constitution, you will see those policies fail. In my opinion, there's no question. People ask me all the time about the Affordable Health Care Act, and I tell them the same thing. There's no way that policy is going to be able to be successful in this country, because too much of our organizations are tied into free markets. Too much of what we do in terms of our national heritage, our business, our economy, it's based upon free markets, a belief in a creator, and that creator gives us our rights. So you're not going to make people do what they don't want to do, even if you try to make it a law. Not in this country. And all of a sudden, and I said this over a year ago, and as more and more problems are coming up with the implementation of this act, the more I just call my father and say, I told you. It's not that the president, I'm sure he's not a bad person, I don't know him, except for the fact that the lies are starting to get on my nerves. I don't know if don't keep telling the same lie over and over and over again. It's not a personal attack. It really isn't. But eventually, like I tell my father and many others that I love and they're near and dear to my heart, please understand, this is a Jeffersonian democracy. Every major business you've seen establish themselves based upon the principles and precepts of our Constitution. So anything that emerges in the 9th hour, which about right now is, to try to change that, there's no way it's going to make it. And I often ask a lot of my friends and some of my colleagues, some are family members, I often ask them when it comes to the Affordable Health Care Act, if it were so great, then why are so many people opting out? And they just look at me. I say, if it were so great, then why does Congress opt out of it? If it's so great, then why is the president giving corporations the opportunity to opt out of it? If it's so great, then how come everyday people that can do nothing about changing the law are forced to do it? Let's just hypothetically pretend that the same president that pushed the Affordable Health Care Act had white skin. Would that make a difference? I like challenging people to think and not just move by the emotional tone of the day, especially when it's spread through our media. I like for people to think for themselves. And then they come up with easy answers. They see it when you take the colorblind lens off. Can I give you a great example? And then I promise I'll give you my prepared speech. But you'll love this example. You ready for this? My father and I love my dad. I'm sitting, this is several years ago. Before I was still in the Marine Corps. And I had not yet made a transition into business. You know, Marine Corps lieutenants, they don't make a whole bunch. Same as Army lieutenants. Same as Coast Guard lieutenants. We don't make a whole bunch. And I remember sitting at the table across from my father, because I've been conservative since college. And he was ranting on and on about these rich people that don't pay their fair share of taxes. I mean, ranting on and on and on and on. So I looked at my dad one day, I'm sitting at the dinner table, I said, well, Dad, can I ask you a question? How many rich people do you know? He looked at me. I said, if you're making these sweeping accusations about all of these wealthy people that don't pay taxes, can you name one that doesn't? That you know personally? Now, fast forward about 5 years later, actually 7 years later, and I become the general manager of a small little uniform company called Centos Corporation, which produces and distributes more uniforms in North America than any other uniform company in the world. And I take over a location in Landover, Maryland. I have about, 212 employees. And like every good general manager and CEO of a location, you're concerned about top and bottom line, because that's what drives your personal revenues. The better you do at the end of the year in terms of profit, the better you're paid. Outside of that, you get a draw. That can barely keep the lights on. Some of you that are business owners know what I'm talking about. Well, I just happened to put together a string of a few good years, doing pretty well. And my dad, who is a tax accountant, does my taxes. And he gives me a call. He gives me a call one Sunday or Monday. I was up here and he says, son, I wanted to call to talk to you about your income. We have got to find another place to put some of your money. It took all I could not to laugh on the phone. So I said, sir, what do you mean? He said, well, I'm just going to be honest with you, son. They're taking way too much of your money. You're not having anything left. I said, really? I said, well, Dad, what do you suggest? He said, well, there's some shelters I learned about that I can help you with your revenues to help keep you. I said, well, Dad, aren't you concerned about me paying my fair share of taxes? He said, son, trust me, you're paying your fair share. Color off the issue, every common sense American will tell you the Affordable Health Care Act can't work. Every common sense American will tell you that the Constitution has got to be our standard of living. Every common sense American will tell you that we have a creator and our rights come from our creator and they don't come from government. But the problem comes when you throw black versus white in there and Republican versus Democrat, and the entire conversation loses common sense. It becomes a matter of proving yourself now. How dare you, Republican man, tell me? That's the issue. That's what we're fighting with. That's what we're dealing with. I am absolutely running for your governor in the state of Maryland. And I'm very honored to do so for all of the before mentioned reasons, but a whole lot more. We all know the problems that exist here in Maryland. The central theme of our platform is going to be pro-growth. We've got to bring business back to our state because we've got to get our people working. Our folks aren't working.
And retirees are moving out.
Retirees are moving out, sir, because they're taxing their pensions to the Hilton Bank. We can't even keep our first responders here in Maryland. And then you wonder why crime is going up. There is a direct correlation to the things that we're doing wrong in terms of government in Annapolis and the mess that we're dealing with in our counties and in our cities. Just travel with me to Baltimore City, where in some areas in Baltimore City, 1 out of every 3 people don't have a job. 10,000 closed warehouses in Baltimore City. I was part of the Baltimore City prayer walk many times. My wife, we'd go from one part of Baltimore City to the next, praying for people, talking with people. Just a spirit of hopelessness in some cases. It's so frustrating to see what government has done to these areas. Why do you say that, Charles? Because we've lost 33% of our manufacturing jobs in the past 9 years, and the lion's share of those jobs came out of Baltimore City. There was a time in our great state where you could leave high school as a high school senior, graduate, and get a middle-class job in a manufacturing business and raise your family. Some of you all have been around long enough to remember that.
Yep.
Now those opportunities are fading, and all we can do is compare and contrast one party against another. But I tell you what, anyone that studied Maryland politics knows you can't blame a Republican for the issues we have in Maryland. We have some solutions for that. And I'd love to get into those, but I'm sure that Tanya will just grab the noose and pull me off. Because my solutions probably take about 15, 20 minutes. But they are surrounding spending, the tax environment, transparency, and education. All geared toward pro-growth, job growth. It's very important that you elect the next governor that has a plan. That you elect the next governor that has the integrity to carry out that plan. That you elect the next governor that can deal with the partisan issues he will face, but maintain his integrity along the way. I was in Montgomery College, talking to a group. One of the hardest conversations I've had, I'll be honest with you. It was an adult education group at Montgomery College, and I mean, there was not one conservative in the place, not one. However, they loved my growth plan. When I talked about spending, when I talked about passing a true taxpayer's bill of rights so that our state government no longer grows faster than cost of living and CPI, they loved that stuff. They loved it. The transparency, not allowing non-elected and non-legislative boards or authorities to increase your fees or taxes anymore. They really like that part. So many parts of our plan, the education plan, where parents and students have the freedom to choose where they want to send their children to school, and their tax dollars should follow. They love that model. The problem they had with, I'm sure I'm your favorite candidate. I'm going to pretend today that I'm your favorite candidate. Thank you, sir. The problem they had with your favorite candidate was when it came to social issues. And one gentleman said, you know, you've done all this talking, and we all understand where you're at, and for the most part, we agree with you. But you haven't said a word about your social issues. Where do you stand on these following issues? My first response was, when you're electing a governor, you're not electing a pastor. I'm not running to be your pastor. I'm running to be your governor. If you want me to be your pastor and tell you how to live, let's get out of the governorship and let's start a church, and I'll tell you how to live. But as your governor, I'm responsible primarily for every penny that you send to Annapolis to ensure it's spent properly, and what's not spent, what's left over, gets sent right back to you because it's your money. I have to secure your God-given rights to ensure that you can prosper in this state as well as in this country. But if you want to know where I stand when it comes to social issues, I'm a pro-life guy. I have 4 daughters. That's not hard to imagine. It's not my business to determine who you decide you want to be with. Just don't call it marriage if it's not between a man and a woman. And that's just my belief. I actually went a step further and probably insulted a couple of them. And I know it was stepping over my bounds, but you know, when you're on a roll, you're on a roll. And I said, well, until Adam and Steve can go into a room with some food in there and maybe some candlelight and come out with more people in the room than they started with, it's not a marriage. By the time I was done surmising, the gentleman to my left said, you do realize, Mr. Lollar, with your social stance, you'll never be elected governor in Montgomery County. And I looked back at the gentleman. I said, sir, I knew that more than likely would be the response before I answered. But I said, I came into this classroom with my integrity, and I intend to leave with it. Amen. I can only be who I am. I'm not going to try to be any more than that. And you should know that because I'm running to be your governor. I should be vetted well. I expect you all to do that. I'm not going to tap dance and say one thing in front of one group and something else in front of another group. Just take a look at what the Baltimore Sun said about your favorite candidate when he spoke in front of the environmental agents of your state. I'm going to tell you, even if you don't like it, and it's okay if you don't, just invite me to leave sooner, and my wife and I will gladly leave. We like going home. We can't be what we're not. We have to be who we are.
That was funny.
And then I said to the class, and I was very sincere, I said, because at the end of the day, if I lose myself behind shuffling around with my policies based upon a different person in the room, and if I get elected, what a tragedy that would be. It would be terrible to be the governor and you not know what my principles are, and now I have to represent something I don't believe in. For me, it would be a tragedy. That's like going to war without a right cause. I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. And then I summed it all up with this. And when I said this, I knew I was going to get kicked out. I said, after all, I would rather be a candidate or a citizen in heaven than to be the governor of hell. We have some serious issues in our state. But there are issues we can solve. But we have to solve them together. And I might not get this chance. I don't know. You all might not invite me back again, so I'll tell you now. I need your help. I know you'll get a lot of fanfare and issues, and people say many things about our campaign, or even about me. I can tell you they're not true until you ask me or ask someone that's involved in our campaign. That's the only way you'll find out the truth. Because folks will say a lot of things about people and situations, especially when the handwriting's on the wall. What handwriting is that, you might ask? Well, we just received an email from a prominent Democrat in Montgomery County, an insider, on the Central Committee that said to one of our names I'm going to leave out on purpose, sent an email to one of our volunteers. For the first time, Lollar's name is coming up as a serious candidate for governor, and they're very concerned amongst the senior Democratic strategists in the state of New York.
Yes.
But I know I can't get there without you. I know we can get there together. I know that without fail, there's nothing that we can't do. But at some point, we got to come together to make it happen. So I'm going to ask you all for your support. Now, I'm sure, like I said before, I'm not everyone's favorite. I'm sure everybody in this room won't support me. So for the two of you that won't, do me a favor. Seriously, there's only two. I counted them. As I was looking around the room, I looked at your eyes. Only two. For the two of you that won't, do me a favor. If you support someone that's running on the same ticket that I'm running on, go back and let them know that you can't win without 35% of the vote from Prince George's, Baltimore City, and Montgomery County, and tell them to go there, please.
Yes.
Exactly.
Please. Go there, please. Now I'll close with this because I've already been named. I've been given so many minute countdowns. If you're going to join our team, because about 98% of you are going to, so thank you for that. Listen, do me a favor. No throwing balls and insults at parties or people. Throw them at policies. When I raised my right hand, I swore to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I'm running for governor to protect this state against the enemies that are out to take away our freedoms. These enemies are policies, ideas, and their issues that are wrong for us. We will go nowhere blaming Democrats. We will go nowhere blaming O'Malley. We will win by blaming the issues that are presented that are wrong for our state. That's a hard battle to fight, I know. It takes a different type of integrity to get there. But this candidate will not be standing in front of you with an opponent on one side, and I'm not going to throw darts at his party, and I'm not going to throw darts at him, but I'm going to attack every policy that gets in the way of our freedoms, because that is the right thing to do. When I become your governor, I won't be just the governor of Democrats, and I won't just be the governor of Republicans. I intend to be the governor of Maryland. Thank you all so very much.